All right, everybody. Jason Sloan here with Furtado Law Solutions. We have our Chief Consultant, Kyle Larson, the roofing expert, and he's going to tell us about everything that happened a few years back where he had to litigate against Allstate. So take it away, Kyle.
Hey, Jason, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, it was an interesting time. It was just well, it's the contractor at that point, but we had, I had realized that a lot of these houses that we were working on had plank decking or space decking, as it were, with little, half-inch or 1-inch gaps in there, and came to the conclusion that we really couldn't put shingles back on there and nail it within the parameters of the manufacturers where they wanted the nailing line, because eventually those nailing lines are going to line up with the gaps in the sheathing, and then obviously the shingles aren't going to be adhered properly. So I started approaching insurers to try to get that taken care of, because per the manufacturer specs, which then become per code, it's you have to do something to make sure those shingles are there. And the easiest way to accomplish that, or make sure those shingles are adhered, the easiest way to accomplish that is to put new decking down. Of course, the insurers, like most things, push back quite a bit. So I got a little tired of that, and started trying to look for ways that I could force them to pay. What avenues did I have as a contractor to get these people, to get my customers taken care of, because the insurance company wasn't. Sorry about that. And so what had happened is prior to all this, in 2008, the state of Colorado had passed a law that had said that if an insurance company unreasonably delays or denies a claim for an insured or a first-party claimant or somebody acting on their behalf, then that person, the insured or whoever their agent was, more or less, had the right or the ability to go after the insurance company for double damages plus attorney's fees. So I read that to mean that as a contractor, I was acting on their behalf. These are the insureds. They're the first party claimant. I'm the contractor. I'm acting on their behalf. And I set out to sue, half a dozen insurance companies for this particular issue because they wouldn't pay based on that language. Every single one of them, except for Allstate, we've got through some of the litigation and they settled the claims. We came to the conclusion. Allstate pushed back and said, absolutely not. We're not going to settle these claims with you. We don't think you even have the right to pursue us. So we went through the normal process of in litigation, which means we've gone to the district court, talk to judges there, and so on and so forth. And eventually, initially, Allstate won. They got a summary judgment. And the district court said that no, Mr. Larson, you have no right to. We agree with Allstate. You have no right to sue them for this. I at that point didn't want to give up, and so I shopped for the attorney I had was great, but he was kind of at the limit of what he could do. So he referred me to somebody else, plus some others referred me to the same individual. So I went to him, this other attorney, and he agreed to take it to the Colorado Court of Appeals, which is what we did. We took it to the Colorado Court of Appeals, and my attorney was able to win that case and get this into the statutes of the state of Colorado. So now this took several years. I mean, I started this whole process in 2009, went through 2010, 2011. I think that's when we finally went to the Court of Appeals, was in 2011. Of course, it takes a long time for them to come to hear anything. So, and we got a decision, I think it was 2012, I don't remember now, 2012 or 2013 is when the decision finally came in. And the Court of Appeals agreed with me that indeed, per the statute that was passed in 2008, a contractor was acting on behalf of an insured, and therefore they're able to sue for double damages and attorney's fees. it took 2 more years for Allstate to finally come around. I got David Furtado at Furtado Law here to finally take Allstate to task on paying me anything. And then at that point, I got enough money to cover my costs, more or less. The important thing that came out of all this was the right of a contractor to pursue an insurance carrier directly. You know, this opened it, in my opinion, it opened the door for contractors to get stuff taken care of the way it was supposed to. In this industry, what happens is we as contractors are the ones that, well, we get in the way. We take all the bullets for the insurance, for the homeowners. It kind of makes sense in one perspective, because we, you know, clearly if you're a homeowner and you file claims, you file maybe a couple in your lifetime, maybe 3 or 4, whatever it might be. You're very inexperienced in this whole process. So having somebody that knows what's needed to be done, and can present these things to the insurance company in a manner, you know, that the insurance company can understand, or supposed to be able to understand, and then be able to hold them to task when they don't do the right thing, when they're bad actors, as it were. Just made sense to me, because we're the ones that's taking the risk anyway. I was the one that paid for that sheathing to put it down. I didn't ask the homeowners, because quite frankly, their insurance company should be the one paying for it. Why would I make them pay for it? It didn't make any sense to me that they should have to incur this cost. So inside of all that, you know, that's having that right to go after the insurance companies as the contractor made 100% sense to me. And I thought at that time, what I thought would happen is okay, this is going to open the door, and we're all going to be, all these contractors in Colorado are now, we're going to get things settled and get them settled right, because the insurance companies are going to, you know, are going to be fearful of all these contractors coming after them. That didn't happen. And even the ones that did go after him, the insurance companies certainly they've revised how they do things, so that they haven't made it easy, for sure. It's a path. It's a path for contractors to pursue, and it makes sense to me that as contractors we should pursue that if necessary. But they didn't just open their checkbooks. In fact, they've gotten, because we have done some litigation, they've certainly gotten much more savvy at how to handle litigation for contractors. And it's been fun at times to see what happens with that. The things that it has opened up, it certainly has opened up the state because of that law, because some other work that we've done down at the Colorado legislature to get things handled for contractors, you know, in a way that makes sense. Because we are out there. Again, we're the first line of defense for homeowners. So in Colorado, at least, because of that law, because of the way the model legislation that came down that said that, you know, about residential roofing claims and how contractors can be involved in that, how we were able to get that changed so that it said that, you know, we could act on behalf of homeowners without having to be a PA, was a big deal. And so in Colorado, these things all combined has made, I think the contractors in Colorado are pretty sophisticated. They've you know, insurers deal with us a little differently most of the time, because they know these things are there, and they know that we have the right to talk to them, and they have to at least deal with us. And you know, if they completely unfair, the contractor again has the right to go after them. And
you and I helped kill that original bill, and then you got to put your little wording in and help write that bill with everybody. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So in 2010, I think it was, our roofing organization, the Colorado Roofing Association, combined with the insurance companies and with a lot of input from public adjusters, we're trying to get a bill passed that said that more or less it said that insurance companies, the worst part for contractors is it said that insurance companies didn't have to talk to contractors at all. In fact, they could just refuse to talk to contractors. That's the way that model legislation that passed in other states before it got here. That's the way it read. And the other parts in it talked about if anybody, contractor or just a laborer, made more than $1,000 from roofing, then they had to be a licensed contractor. Well, clearly our labor pool at that time and to this day, the labor pool all over the country is not necessarily people that can get a license because they're not even legal. So since 90% of our labor is not legal United States citizens, they'll never get licensed. So that was, in my opinion, was an attempt to cut most of the contractors out of the picture, because there's so very few roofing contractors these days that have their own W-2 employees that are doing the labor. Most everybody's using subcontract crews, and the subcontract crews, like it or not, no matter where your political beliefs are, this is who the labor is. The labor is, for the most part, it's illegals. I work tirelessly to make sure they're still getting paid fairly, because that still makes sense to me. I came into this industry I was a roofing laborer. That's how I learned roofing. I didn't have anything to do straight out of high school, more or less, and I wanted to buy beer. So roofing seemed like a pretty good way to at least be able to afford beer. So I have a heart for the labor itself, and I think that we need to make sure they're getting paid fairly and correctly. But that is the labor. So that bill to me was going to eliminate that, as well as some other parts in it, which just made it impossible for us to deal with the insurance companies. Our roofing organization, the Colorado Roofing Association, I don't think they were very familiar. I don't think it was necessarily evil that they were involved in it. They were trying to make the industry better. And so, because it also came with state licensing, which I think is a good thing. To this day, I'm for state licensing if we could ever get something passed that would, make one license for roofing contractors across the state. However, because of that wording in there, it was just a bad bill, and I was able to rally several contractors to stand up and go down to the state capitol and rally against it. And we were successful in getting it killed in, I think it was 2010. In 2011, the insurers came back with another bill because they still wanted the parts that they were interested in, the parts that said we're not to refund deductibles, and then how the communication between the contractors and the insurers was set up to go. That's when I was able to get down there and change the language and have that portion of it say that a contractor can act on behalf of a homeowner in the discussion of the scope of the repairs with the insurance company. And this is a Colorado statute, so the insurers have to talk to us. After that bill passed Colorado, every state it passed after that, it contained that same language, which there's been a whole bunch of debate about these kind of things over the years between contractors and public adjusters and attorneys and so on and so forth. And what I think, I'm not 100% sure of where the PAs fit into this or how they feel. I think most PAs, for the most part, they're 100% for contractors. Contractors being involved and being in talking to the insurance companies to resolve the scope of repairs and the price. I mean, if you're going to talk about the scope of repairs, you're going to talk about price at some point. There's just no getting around that. I think that some of the PA organizations, trade organizations, saw this as somehow interfering, getting on their turf, as it were. And so I think that their trade organizations have been maybe opposed to having contractors do that. But the truth is that most PAs I know don't have the time or the bandwidth or any desire to work on a residential claim that's $14,000, $15,000. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense from them from a money standpoint. It doesn't make any sense from the homeowner's perspective, because they're committing, if you're taking 10% of the claim value and giving that to a PA, it oftentimes doesn't leave enough to get the work done. So by allowing a contractor to step in there and talk about the scope of repairs with the insurance company, it just makes sense. I mean, yes, do we have a vested interest in the amount? Yes, we do have a vested interest, but at the end of the day, our interest and the homeowners' interest are really aligned, because we're trying to get them we're trying to do the best job for them ethically, only, and get stuff paid for that needs to be paid for because we have to do it. So our interests are somewhat aligned, and I think it makes sense. And I think the industry as a whole has now kind of adopted that attitude. I don't think that, this was 10 years ago. I think there was a lot of pushback from PAs, from attorneys, from others that I went to attorneys and they told me, what are you doing? You should get out of this. You have no right to discuss this. And then I said, well, why not? I'm the guy that's writing the damn checks for this stuff. Why wouldn't I have a right to discuss it? It only makes sense that I should be able to discuss it. And I think this is true. Again, Colorado's been on the leading edge of these things. But I really think it makes sense across the whole country. This is the way it should be. Contractors should have that, and insurers should have to honor that right of the contractors to discuss the claim. They are the ones they're truly the ones that are writing the checks to pay for it. I mean, I guess the insurers ultimately write the checks, but the contractor's the one that's got to front all the money. So they should have some say in how that goes. So all that said, that's why Colorado, to me, is a model of how the rest of the country could look and should look. And you're starting to see. I've seen, since all this has happened, I've seen the advancement of contractors across the country, where they're becoming much more aware of of where they stand in it, why they should have some say in it, and my hope is that that kind of stuff will keep spreading, that the contractors become aware. In Colorado, it was grassroots that really did it. It was us as contractors banding together for a common interest that we needed to get addressed. And I think if contractors across the country would do that on some level, try to reach out to your brethren, and when you see things, and we see legislation happening, when you see things that aren't good for consumers or you, because we're all consumers as well, try to get together and have a voice in that kind of stuff. It's the only way to have any power. The power that we do have is limited, and compared to the insurance companies, we're minuscule. But we can have some voice, and I'm a shining example of, if you have enough stubbornness, you can get some stuff done. I was just one guy calling my other brethren that I didn't even know, contractors I didn't even know who they were. I've heard of them, and said, hey, have you seen this bill? It's going to kill your business. You realize that, right? And so it worked. That tended to work, and we found common ground to work on.
What do you think about that new law in Florida that I sent you over the other day?
Florida is such a disaster. It's such a mess. I don't know what to think of Florida. Florida is no different anywhere. I mean, did the insurers come in with this? Again, this is my opinion, but they come in with interests that meet their interest, and they've got a lot of money to throw around, and then the public relations campaign is all about these nasty contractors, which there is nasty contractors, but the nasty contractors are such a small percentage of the overall, but one bad apple that does one bad thing, no matter where it is, that gets all the attention. If I'm a contractor that rips off, I don't know, 30 insureds for $150,000, I'm going to get all the news, and that's going to be the things that the insurers are going to use as evidence and leverage to get legislation passed that in the end, it really hurts consumers, hurts contractors. It doesn't make any sense. You don't hear about the contractor that did 30 jobs and made a 10% margin because there was no money to be made, but he just wanted to help the consumers because they needed to get their work done.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get the news at all. But that is the vast majority of contractors. They just want to try to help the consumers to get their whatever work taken care of, and they should be paid fairly and compensated well. It only makes sense. So Florida, it's just like many other states that, they get these power at the lobbyists for the insurance companies get down there and they get stuff passed that makes no sense, and they sell it under the banner of this is to help consumers and keep insurance premiums down.
Affordable.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I don't know if that's the goal that any of us should be having anyway. Yes, things happen, storms happen, hail, whatever it might be, comes and it's a mess. It's, if you're a homeowner and you have to deal with all that, it's a pain in the butt. But it does happen, and none of us can control the weather. So it's a lot worse if you're a consumer and you can't get a contractor to do the work because they can't get paid correctly from the insurance companies or whatever. They're trying to cut corners just to make it fit. I think I've yet to meet a consumer who's gone through a very bad experience with an insurance company that wouldn't have rather paid a higher premium. So, and got the claim settled in a manner that was reasonable and efficient and made sense. This protracted trying to get claims settled, trying to get the scope right, all that kind of stuff drives consumers crazy. That doesn't benefit the consumers at all. And I'm sure that most of them would be happy to pay, another $1,000 a year or $1,500 a year. Once they've been through a bad experience with a claim, then it's all of a sudden it's not necessarily about, oh, I'm going to get the lowest rate from whoever, right? They see the value of what they're paying for and what they're going to get. And so, and on top of that, all of these funds, like in a place like Colorado, the Front Range of Colorado, it's 1% of our gross GDP every year on average. That's a whole ton of money that gets pumped back into the economy. It's not that those premiums aren't in areas where they get hit with storms and where the rates maybe could be higher or probably already pretty high. A large portion of those premiums just end up going back into the economy anyway. So it's on some level it's good for all of us. It's certainly good for us that are in the industry, but we are part of the economy, and we end up the money that I make, that every contractor makes, that we go out and spend that and on other industries. We go out to eat, we buy clothes, whatever. But that money is not going to. It's not like it's going to just stay in State Farm's coffers in Illinois. So a good portion of that comes back here. So all of those things is why it makes sense to me that again, contractors should be a big part of this and be able to discuss with the insurers what needs to happen, and insurers legislators should at least consider that fact. Consider that this is 10,000 jobs or more in Colorado. It's probably more than that, and it's a whole lot of money that gets pumped into the economy. So when they're considering what laws they're going to pass, I think there needs to be some consideration of that as well. That this is not. It's not just a suck on consumers in premiums, because that money stays in the state for the most part, and they should at least consider that.
Have you made any headway with you? I know you had reached out to Steve Patrick about putting something together, like to be able to deal with legislation and stuff around the country whenever something comes up. Did that ever go anywhere? Or is that still in the talks?
Well, Steve and I we've had a couple discussions about that kind of stuff. I one time reached out to him about pulling together a kind of a defense fund too, or maybe we could get some lawyers that would step in and help contractors who needed help. But that's all the further it's gone. With Steve and I, Steve has his lane that he's in. He's leveled the playing field. He does a great benefit to contractors. A great place to go in and share information and get information from other contractors. I'm not, I don't know how engaged Steve Patrick is in something like that. I don't know that and part of it, he's probably right. He's told me, look, if you tried to raise some money through level the playing field, you'd be lucky if you get 0.5% of the people to actually put something in. So trying to herd contractors for the most part is like trying to herd cats. They really want to be involved when they're up against issues, But when not, when things seem to be rolling along and there's a good storm and they're making good money, we are not like other industries where we see the value in having representation. But maybe we're getting there. There is organizations like the American Adjuster Association that really seem to be involved. I know they're involved in legislation in several states across the country. They were heavily involved in battling the stuff that just recently happened in Florida. Though I think they got defeated. They just didn't have enough. Not enough power, I guess is the word. But they've had success in other places. So we're starting to see some of that. I don't know the level of the playing field is the place where that'll come from, but I think there's organizations like the American Adjuster Association and others that are seeing the light. And it's a gigantic industry, and it's not driven by the economy, it's driven by storms. So it just makes 100% sense to me that we would have some form of organization that represents the interests of contractors. It's in a unified front instead of me fighting the insurers by myself. It's just silly. But I was able to do it. Mm-hmm. But it took a lot of help. I wasn't able to do it without help, and I was very devoted to the cause. So the more that contractors collaborate with each other and talk about the issues they're facing, and then try to put that out in the true level the playing field is a great place to put that kind of stuff out. You can certainly gather some interest, but we got to take some action well beyond that. It can't just be us. I can tell you and 1,000 other contractors, and we can talk about the problems that we have, and we can bitch at each other about all these problems, but that doesn't do any of us any good if we're not trying to do something to change it. If we're not really involved in somewhere to change it. That's the difference between us and the insurers. The insurers, they know when to band together. They know when they're competitors, yes, but at the same time, when it comes to legislation and issues that are important to all of them, they pool their resources and money because they realize that they're going to benefit, and we need that same kind of power. And I've been at this for quite a few years now, and nothing changes fast in this industry. It takes time, and I'm seeing that kind of collaboration coming together in pockets here and there, and I think it's just going to get more and more. And I don't think this, certainly the weather's not going to change. It's if anything, it's going to get worse. So there's just going to be more of this, and we don't want to see this industry become something where they drive down the pricing so much that it's the only guys that can afford to do it. Which is very beneficial to the insurance companies. If all that can afford to be in this industry is a chuck in the truck or a single man contractor, because he doesn't have any overhead costs, he doesn't have any sales costs, he's pretty much the labor and everything else. That would be the perfect world for the insurance companies, because then they can drive the cost, keep the cost down. But I don't know I'm certain that it's not the best result for consumers and all of us as residents of whatever state we have to be in. So I'm gonna, as long as I'm living, breathing, and not suffering from some kind of mental disorder, I will be fighting for this stuff continuously.
Yep. And you got to get off here in a minute, right?
I do. I've got 2:30, so it's 2:28.
All right. Well, if anybody needs to contact us for help with their supplements, estimates, or even just to talk shop about issues, me and Kyle have seen pretty much everything. One of our clients actually just put a comment, Daniel Hilton, and he's actually reached out to some other contractors because they've had issues in Missouri. So if you guys just want to talk about how we made stuff happen, that's fine too, because getting contractors.
Hey, real quick, because
just
a minute. I know what Daniel's talking about too. So and there's some stuff in the works that I'm behind trying to get taken care of, where we're going to do a counter narrative survey to Xactimate to try to get some pricing, to get to the facts about what your costs are, so we can have some kind of a counter to Xactimate pricing. And so I would encourage everybody to be on the lookout for an email that talks about that some kind of inquiry or survey about pricing and answer that email, because I'm going to use that information to help you. We're going to do it by region, and we're going to try to gather some data that will support, the pricing that you really need, not the ridiculous published pricing and Xactimate. There's some regions, Colorado pricing, Denver region is really pretty damn good compared to the rest of the country, but that's because we as contractors have worked our ass off here to get that taken care of. But there's parts of the country where I talk to contractors, they can't even afford to do really, if they do a roof, they're just doing it at cost. If that claim doesn't come with additional siding and everything else, there's really no point in them even doing the work. And that's just not right. That's not the way it's supposed to be. So.
All right. Sounds good. Well, once again, if anybody needs us, you can contact me at 720-296-6618. And there's my email, Jason at Furtada Law Solutions. Kyle is Kyle at Furtada Law Solutions. And then do you have a different phone number for the office, right, Kyle? Do you want to give that out?
No, I only used one number.
Well, give out your number then.
The number to reach me is 720-309-7191.
Okay, great. Well, everybody, if you need us, hit us up. Talk to you soon. See you next week.
See you later.